Hi everyone. This is going to be part 2 of drawing and painting some of the elements. And what I mean by that is earth, wind, fire, and water. So last week I focused in on water and we did a drawing of splashing water and also ice, icicles and an ice cube. So a little bit more abstract. These aren't meant to be projects necessarily, but just some really good practice. You're free to, of course, develop it into a project if you want, but I'm intending it to be more like just some good drawing practice and giving us a little bit of a challenge. I like a challenge. I don't know if you like a challenge, but some of the things that I'm doing in these videos are challenging, and it's just good for us to give it a try and experiment. So today we're going to be doing fire. I'm going to demonstrate how to draw it with colored pencil and paint fire, and also marble. So when I say earth, I mean like rocks and minerals. And so today we're going to be trying to create the look of marble using our B pencils. So please don't feel overwhelmed by these videos. I haven't heard from a lot of you, so I'm not sure if you're watching, if you're doing the projects. I have heard from some of you and I've seen some of your artwork, and I appreciate that. But don't feel overwhelmed. I know some of you are trying to catch up. Some of you are still doing your complete the face project, and if you are, that's okay. These videos can maybe carry you into the summer. Even after our class is officially over, you can keep watching the videos and you can kind of catch up and do some of these projects or these exercises over the summer. So anyway, let's get to drawing and painting fire. So I'm going to show you fire two different ways. I'm going to show you fire with colored pencil, and then I'm going to demonstrate with paint. And I actually think it's easier to do fire or flames with paint than with colored pencil, but I will demonstrate both ways. So we're just going to start with some wavy lines. You know, maybe like that, of different lengths. We're just trying to get that flame, that look of flames, okay? So wavy lines, I put some sharp points at the top of each one, and I'm using kind of an amber yellow color, and then I'm just going to start to shade, and I'm going to want to use several different colors in my flames. So I have some of that amber color. Now I'm going to go over it with some bright yellow. And then I'm going to go over my yellow again with some of that same amber color so that it kind of blends a little bit better, like that. I'm going to want, in some areas, I'm going to want to keep it almost white. So I'm going to use very little pressure with my yellow in certain areas, like that. So maybe in certain spots, I almost want to do like another little shape like that and keep some of that white or very light by not using a lot of pressure, and then adding pressure as I move outward. And then I'm going to switch back to that amber color. So, I mean, if you have a nice set of colored pencils at home with lots of different colors, that's great. If you don't, it's going to be hard to just do it with one yellow. But we're also going to add some orange and some red. So it just takes time. This is why I think it's easier to paint than to use colored pencil, because this just takes a lot of time, which is okay. But it's much faster and easier to get to create a blended look with paint, than I think, than with colored pencil. So I'm just adding some red. I'm going to, or actually that's like a deep orange. So I'm just bouncing back and forth with my colors. You might want to outline it a little bit with that orange. And I'm going over it again. So I'm layering. See how I'm layering? You want to make each flame a little different. You don't want all the flames to be exactly the same. And fire, you know, can look different. I mean, whether you're drawing like the flame on a candle, you might see some blue at the base. Or whether you're drawing like a bonfire, like a campfire or a fireplace. The flames or the fire might look different depending on what you're drawing. Okay, so I'm just going to keep building this up, layering my colors. I am going to try to add some darker tones, so maybe I even want to use some browns or even black to create some dark shadow in my flame. I've added some brown. I kind of used this chestnut brown or kind of an orangey brown. And then I went over it with some of that dark orange, just to give it a little, I wanted to have some dark shadowy parts of my flames. So it's kind of abstract, like all of these things that we're doing in this series of elements. But keep working at it and building it up and layering your colors. I'm gonna work on mine, so you might want to pause the video and work on yours, or you can just keep watching and then work on yours afterwards. But I'm gonna pause the video and work on mine, and then I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. So here's what my fire looks like. And then I decided to add some black to the background, so I colored it in with black colored pencil. And I love how it looks with that contrast. So for painting fire, I have a little setup here with some acrylic paint. And I'm just using very inexpensive acrylic paint, like the Apple Barrel or Anita's acrylic. It's like a craft acrylic. So I'm not using heavy-bodied acrylic paints for this. Which means I'll probably have to do a couple coats with the yellow. But anyway, I have a jar of water. I have some paint already put on my little plastic lid, which I'm using as a palette. And I'm going to use round brushes. So these are all just various sizes of round brushes. Of course, there's lots of different types of paint brushes, but I think a round brush would be best in this situation and for the flames of fire. And you can see, especially on these larger ones, that they kind of come to a point at the top. So that'll be handy. And then if you don't have any canvas at home, or if you just don't want to use a canvas for something like this, since it's just kind of like practice, I just took a piece of cardboard. It's an old piece of cardboard from the back of one of my sketch pads. And or it might be the back of, I think, from a watercolor pad of paper. Anyway, I went ahead and I painted it black first with black acrylic paint. So that'll give us a nice background, a nice base to work on, and then the fire will really look vibrant against that black background. So you might want to prepare a surface for yourself before you start painting the fire. So I'm going to approach it very similar to how I did in the drawing, where I'm just going to start with some wavy lines like this. And I'm going to try to do different heights so they're not all the same height. Some are longer, taller, some are shorter, and some are fatter, some are thinner. And by the way, you cannot do this, what I'm doing right now, you cannot do this with watercolor paint, because watercolor paint is translucent, and you can't cover light colors over dark colors with watercolor. So you can only do this with like acrylic or oil. Of course, with oil paint, it takes a long time to dry. So that's why I'm using acrylic. So I'm just gonna finish the shape of my flame. And if you want, you can pause the video and do the shape of your flames. So now you can see that I am filling in my flames with yellow, and I'm just trying to get like a base coat of yellow. And you can see right away, this is such thin, watery paint. It's very very thin and very liquidy, so it's going to require a couple coats, like I said. Whereas a heavier bodied paint, a thicker paint, might cover this easier, or with less coats of paint. Of course, we're trying to go over black with yellow. But I'm just going to go ahead and finish filling this in. So you can go ahead and pause the video and fill yours in too. So one reason I'm using these inexpensive acrylic paints is because they dry fast. That's one benefit of using them, is they dry super fast, much faster than like a heavier bodied paint. So you can move forward a little faster. So now that I have my base coat, and I'll show you my palette. I have some yellow, bright yellow. I also have some golden yellow. I have orange. I have crimson red. I have a barn red, which looks really brown, but it's actually barn red. And then I have some white. So that's what I have on my palette right now. And so what I'm going to do now, because this type of acrylic paint dries fast, it also means you have to work fast, because you want these colors to stay wet long enough to blend them. And so like I said, you have to work pretty quickly. So see how I did that? I added a little bit of orange. And since my yellow is still wet, it blends very nicely. So if you don't go fast enough and the paint dries or starts to dry and gets tacky, it's going to be much harder to blend. So that's what I'm going to do throughout all my flames. I'm going to kind of bounce around with my colors. It's going to be mostly yellow. I'm going to add a little white here and there like that. And then I'm also going to add my orange. And I'm sorry if my camera is bouncing around. I'm actually trying to do this. I'm trying to hold the camera and paint at the same time. I'm holding the camera with one hand and painting with the other, so it's not real easy. But you get the idea, right? So I'm just kind of blending my colors and trying to create my flame. So I'm going to do that for a while. I'll add some of the darker colors too, and you can put it on pause and work on yours for a while, or you can just keep watching, but I'm going to put it on pause and keep working on this, and I'll show you what it looks like in just a minute. So I haven't finished it yet, but I just wanted to show you just a little bit, maybe a little bit more of my process. So I put yellow here. And again, you have to work pretty quickly because this paint dries really fast. If you're using heavier bodied paints, then maybe you don't have to work so fast. But with these less expensive, thinner paints, you definitely have to go fast. So adding some white in there, I think really helps. And again, while the paint is wet, going to blend very nicely all on its own as you use your brush. Now don't overbrush. You don't want it to, whoops, you don't want it to turn all into one color. You want to keep those colors separate. I'm going to add some of my dark colors. So here's some of that dark barn red. And then I'm going to add some yellow and orange right on top of it and next to it. I'm going to clean out my brush a little bit. Just have fun with it. You know, while I was doing this, I was thinking of a student a long time ago did some artwork for me, and on it she put a quote from Picasso, and the quote was, I keep doing that which I do not know how to do in order that I might learn to do it, or something like that. And I just love that quote because, you know, as an artist, and actually with most things in life, the way we're gonna figure out how to do it is by doing it, by the practice of it. So we learn by doing it. I mean, you can watch me do it, but you're gonna learn much better by following along and trying it yourself. So I'm gonna work on this for a few more minutes and then I'll show you my finished fire. Okay, so here's what I have. Here's what I ended up with. And another piece of advice, important advice, is to make sure you let your layers of paint dry before adding new layers. So I know I said that the paint dries really fast, and it does, but the more paint you put on, the more layers you put on, the more time it's going to need to dry. So don't keep adding paint to it when it's tacky. Let it dry, and then you can go ahead and keep adding more layers. I'm also going to include a photo in a minute of a painting by a German artist named Gerhard Richter. And he is an amazing painter. He's probably one of the greatest painters who are currently living. Some of his work is on display at the Art Institute in Chicago. And he has done a lot of paintings of flames and candles with flames. And they look so realistic. It looks like a photograph. So it's almost hard to believe that it is a painting, but I think you'll enjoy seeing that. So anyway, have fun, just experiment, and I would love to see your paintings of fire when you're done. So here's one of Gerhard Richter's paintings, and you can see what I mean by how impressive of an artist he is. Here's a close-up of a candle, and it's hard to believe that it's a painting and not a photograph. He's quite a master. Anyway, I decided to break this lesson into 2 videos. So feel free to take a break or do the next video on another day. But for the marbling part of the lesson, and here's a beautiful picture of marble, please watch the second video.